Hi everyone, it's been a while. My name is Night Purple. Back in 2011 up until 2018 I made Swedish Let's Play videos, including games such as Minecraft, Terraria, my most popular game Battlefield Heroes, rest in peace, and World of Warcraft, which this video is about. More specifically, World of Warcraft Classic. So after a 7-year hiatus of having no idea of what video to make next, mixed with a genuine disinterest in making videos, and with a pinch of life stirred in, I finally decided to make an attempt at a comeback. So lately we have been in a time where developers are either remastering or re-releasing old games for modern systems like Zelda Link's Awakening remake, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Warcraft 3 Reforged, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Metroid Prime Remastered, Halo the Master Chief Collection, and more. Safe to say that people are longing for a simpler time when games were, well, simpler. One of those games are World of Warcraft Classic, released in 2019, which is a re-release of the first version of World of Warcraft released in 2004. It was requested for years, and in 2017 they finally announced that WoW Classic is going to happen. I got very excited about it since I started playing towards the beginning of the Burning Crusade, and I played on private servers since my mom did not want to pay the subscription for her then 11-year-old baby boy. I remember playing the demo for a bit, before I started playing on my first private server called CasWoW. Shout out if you remember that one. It was a server that allowed you to level up to level 200 through a custom leveling road filled with neutral mobs, which you grinded through, eventually reaching the max level. And afterwards, you could basically do whatever you wanted. I remember going around Azeroth and one-shotting everything. Really fun times for 11-year-old me. I also remember playing on other servers that had custom obstacle courses that had rewards for you if you could complete them, and sometimes even custom built stuff like a pool with trampolines and deck chairs with parasols. Sometimes even with custom NPCs who sold drinks to you. It really was a server you could just chill and hang out with, and not just do raids and PvP. I jumped on and off from server to server that were both fun servers and high rate XP servers, since, spoiler alert, already then I thought the Bliss-like leveling speed was way too slow. Around the end of Cataclysm and the beginning of Pandaria, I made my first retail account, and started playing on the official servers when I could pay for the sub with my monthly allowance. And it is the account I've been playing on ever since. Excited for Classic WoW, I followed a podcast called Countdown to Classic that went through all the lore and all the differences between Classic and retail. The podcast included interviews with Classic veterans who shared their knowledge of the game and what you could expect from it. So my main back in the day was a feral druid called Night Purple, and it was the character I decided to main in Classic as well. There was a small problem though. There were specs which was not really ideal for PvE gameplay, and some were flat out horrendous, and is highly recommended to not play. One of the not so ideal specs was Feral Druid. After hearing what you needed to do to even reach the same damage as a Frostbolt spamming mage, I got a bit discouraged. I shook it off and decided that surely people would not care too much of what you play, right? I mean, judging from what I've heard on the podcast, Classic seems very easy. Funny, since I remember around the mid-2010s how people would joke around how easy retail is and how retail players would never survive even a day in vanilla.
This is vanilla, idiot! You won't last 3 seconds in this place on your own! Here, a single mob can kill you just by looking you in the eye!
It's truly a mystery. The day of the WoW Classic release finally came. I recorded my first day playing it with my rogue and also streamed leveling my druid a couple of days after the release date, so there wouldn't be so many people and disconnects during the stream. It was around this time, however, where I lost interest in making videos and stream, since not many people were watching the streams and my videos, and I had a hard time finding ideas for what videos to do next. So between then and mid-RAF of the Lich King Classic, I have unfortunately no media to share other than screenshots. We are, as of me recording this, once again in Pandaland with Mr. Pandaria Classic, and WoW Classic is 6 years old. It's kinda crazy to think about actually, and it's going to turn 7 years old this year. This will be a video about my thoughts and opinions on how I experienced the classic. Sorry. This will be a video about my thoughts and opinions on how I experienced the Classic expansions, Vanilla through Cataclysm, and I might squeeze in how I feel about Mr. Pandaria currently. Classic is currently a handful of other versions that you can play. SOD, Hardcore, Era, and Anniversary servers. I want to cover them all in another video where I talk about Classic Plus, which is something that a lot of Classic players are longing for. So if you want me to make a video talking about more about that, then let me know in the comments. But enough rebelling.
Let's go!
As I said, I started on the release date in 2019, and after a lot of waiting in the queue, I got in. I recorded my gameplay while I watched Asmongold's stream with Svan and McConnell, who you can hear in the background. In the loading screen, though, I heard something I wasn't expecting.
We need to start killing. Just a second.
I'm trying.
Asmongold sounded very stressed out and wanted his group to start killing mobs and get shit done quickly. Why? Wasn't the whole idea of Classic that the game starts at level 1? Why are we in such a rush? Like, why are we not enjoying the ride? Anyway, I played as best as I could with the lag, and I already bumped into my first negative about the game. Mob tagging. So basically, if someone who is not in your group deals damage to a mob before you do, the mob is grayed out, and you don't get any quest progress or loot from that mob. I swear it got frustrating quick with the lag on top of it. Sure, it basically forces you to group up with people so you can spread out and get more tags that way. And it made for some fun RP moments with everyone making a queue to kill named mobs. But I feel like it could have gone much smoother if the tags were shared at least the first week or two until the storm of players have calmed down. I don't want to be stuck doing a quest for hours just because there are 30 other players scouting an area for the same type of mob. On top of that, most of the quest items in Classic are not 100% drop rate, so it just makes it take even longer. Unfortunately, a lot of the times I feel like I've been playing the game against players of my own faction rather than with them, due to them not accepting an invite despite us clearly being on the same quest, and continues to farm the same mobs you're farming.
Too easy.
My mob.
I cannot say it was a good first impression, but I had a guild I planned to play with, so I fought through it. The guild was created by a Swedish podcast I followed at the time called Warcraft Podden, and the guild got the same name. A couple of days later, I streamed myself playing my druid Night Purple in hope of that the storm of players have calmed down. Thankfully, I was right. This is how it should be. Not too many, so a simple kill quest takes forever, but not too few, so I could at least group up for harder quests like the Relics of Awakening. The leveling was slow, but the early levels up until around 30 felt fine. After I was around level 33, I started to feel a bit burned out from levelings. It's gotten so slow.
Wow, this is a lot of hard work. I wonder how much training we got out of that. That's all the progress I made? That tiny Tim of a goddamn tick?
I didn't feel like I made much progress, and the number of quests was starting to run out. Eventually, at level 42, I decided to take a break from Classic until I wasn't burned out from leveling. On the 1st of July 2020, I returned to the game, and Classic was already on Phase 4, which was the release of Sul'Gurub and Arathi Basin. The guild I planned to play with, however, was as dead as the Shimmering Flats, but I decided to go on anyway and hoped that people would come back by the time I hit 60. Unfortunately, I was wrong. So I decided to leave the guild and look for a new one. I looked for a Swedish raiding guild who would take a feral druid in. It took a while, but I eventually found a guild called Hybris that said I could join if I went resto until I got better feral gear. Whatever. I guess it won't be that long until I get to play feral. But even when I got a good amount of gear, they still wanted me to go resto. Like, brother, if I wanted to go resto, then I would go resto, would I not? Now I keep having to respec every reset because they keep wanting me to heal instead of playing what I wanted. Anyway, after some time there was some DKP drama in the guild, and the guild disbanded. I joined a group who I played the most with in the guild who were going to join another guild called Exalted. And to this day, this is the guild I've been playing with. I played up until AQ40 with them, and that was unfortunately the last Classic Vanilla raid I did before TBC Classic launched. I never played Nax 40 other than a run just to dip our toes in some of the bosses, since my guild's second group, who were designed to be more casual than our first, more tryhard raid group, never got a raid sign up, and I'm not that tryhard of a raider, and would probably be put it to tank or healer instead anyway. Looking at how much you needed to prep for Nax though, I didn't really care for it anymore. Like, did we really have to farm Frost Rest gear just for one freaking boss? And holy crap, was the Frost Rest pieces expensive on the auction house. On top of that, TBC Classic was announced, so that killed basically all interest in trying. So, why did you decide to play Druid then, you might ask? You knew that the class was gonna be shit from the start, yet you still did it. Well, how bad would it really be to just, I don't know, fix the specs so that they aren't complete dog shit? So this won't be a problem to begin with? This seemed to be a popular opinion for a potential Classic Plus, so players must have been at least a bit frustrated on the fact that the class difference is so huge. Oh, sorry, that would mean that the specs are too homogenized and it would not be fun anymore, huh? Well, being forced to play only one spec out of 4, it's not really that fun either. So I guess it is what it is. So I'm going to start with the negatives and talk about the positives afterwards, because if I got the question, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news first? At least I would want to get the negatives out of the way. Let me just say this right now, that this is my opinion.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
Based on my experience of my time in Classic. If you felt it was a better or worse experience than me, well, that's fine, but... Opinion! Well, I digress. Anyway, let's go. It is going to be increasingly obvious as the video goes on, but I do prefer retail over Classic. More specifically, Vanilla Classic. I'm not going to do a reverse Queen69 and pretend like I'm not going to sound like a retail Andy throughout this video, despite Classic being a worthwhile journey.
Also, I want to preface, I'm not some Classic Andy. A lot of you guys probably think like, oh, this guy is, well, he likes WoW, but he just likes old WoW. No, I straight up think that flying in World of Warcraft, yeah, it's cool, but it's actually dog shit and bad for the game.
I mean, I have been playing since Classic came out, so it was obviously worth it. Some expansions have just been better than others, let's just say. Hashtag no changes will be the main con here, and what I will mention here is due to hashtag no changes being a thing. When we talk about what the so-called Classic experience is, one point is about how bad everyone was back in the day. Everyone was a noob, and in turn everyone was on the same page. The world was so big because we didn't know Azeroth in and out like we do today. But with Vanilla WoW being 15 years at the time, basically everything was already solved. There's no experimenting with talent trees because the best build is right there on the internet. Just look it up on Icy Veins or Wowhead. And you can't argue against it because it's been running through the sim grinder for all of these 15 freaking years. All possible outcomes points towards the build being the best, and if you don't have that build, you're basically griefing. With nothing new added or nothing changed, the Classic experience is almost impossible to achieve since we are very different as gamers for starters, and because everything can just be looked up on Wowhead or Icy Veins now. The only time you're going to get somewhat of a Classic experience is, in my opinion, the first phase, where everyone is leveling and the world feels alive and well. The rest feels just as endgame focused like retail or any other Classic expansion, so I don't really understand why people say that Classic Vanilla is not a raid logging / parsing game today.
Why do Warriors hit so hard? Because Classic WoW is awesome and it's a balanced game. And everybody says retail is bad, and go play Classic. And then you look at vlogs and it's literally just Warrior. Yeah, endgame is kind of though, you have to agree.
This is a thing in all versions of WoW.
I'm like, you played Season Discovery. He's like, I did. And then I tried to come back and do BFD. And he couldn't even get into a group because he didn't have parses. And he had the epic weapon from the raid. Didn't Zico make a whole video about this? He did. Zico did make a video about it. And I feel like it's a huge problem Because again, like, I think that there needs to be like a return to video games as an experience rather than video games as a reward dopamine simulator conveyor belt. I think that, like, really people have turned video games into such a contrived experience that I think it's very harmful. So I think what Blizzard should do is they should make it to where nothing can access the API anymore. Because I think that parsing has killed the game.
Like, parsing honestly feels like you're just griefing your healer so you can squeeze in one more frostbolt before you're actually playing the mechanics. I don't like it. Especially in vanilla, where parses for mages are just how many frostbolts they casted on the boss. If everyone went for good parses, then all of a sudden no one does the mechanics.
Turn. Come on, he says a lot of parry. Watch your KTM, man. Watch your KTM. Hello? Like, why are we having deaths? When I say watch your fucking KTM, watch your KTM! Stupid fucking melee, man! That's literally like 5 to 10 minutes now, by the way. That's lost right here. Because you stupid Swedish fucking warriors can't stop DPSing.
No one kicks or silences and no one dispels, because that would mean that they will do less damage and they will get worse parses because of it. So they just hope someone else would do it for them and then get mad when we keep wiping. Parsing should be only done when the boss is on farm, in my opinion. But then I guess it's not as fun anymore, so I cannot win, really. Spell batching is an example of Blizzard going, well, you wanted changes? Well, here you go, sucker. I cast artificial lag. Melee leeway is just as redundant and also got added just because of hashtag no changes.
Alright, so leeway. What is leeway? Well, if two players are in PvP combat and both players are moving, what will happen is the game will give you extra range on your melee attacks and your melee abilities. I will demonstrate that right now. I'll go into base melee range, which is going to be about here. Now, if I move backwards, I cannot attack my friend here. However, if I start moving, I start strafing here, the game thinks I'm moving and it activates the leeway mechanic. As you can see, I am now slicing from across the equator. I can, of course, use my Raptor Strike as well. That is absolutely fine. There you go. So here is my max range now with the leeway.
Like why? This is getting ridiculous at this point. We have basically NASA computers now compared to 2004. Why are we intentionally handicapping ourselves like this? As I said in the beginning of the video, my main during my private server days was a Night Elf Feral Druid called Night Purple. Which is, if you are curious, basically just Night from Night Elf and Purple from the hair color I chose. Yeah, creative, I know. Night Purple came to be my current main in retail next to my mage, who I've mained since Mop, all the way up until Shadowlands. I planned for him to be my main, since if I'm going to get the classic experience, I might as well get it with Night Purple. There was a teeny tiny problem though. Feral Druids are basically ass, unless you get a level 40 helm and play around a mechanic called power shifting. I don't remember having to do all that back in the day. But then again, as I said, I played mostly on fun servers. That's not even the worst part though. In the dungeon Nomrigon, there's a boss called Crowd Pummeler 960, which drops a weapon called Manual Crowd Pummeler, a level 29 two-handed mace that has a special on-use effect. This effect, when activated, gives you a 50% attack speed, which gives a much needed boost in your DPS. And since Feral Druids can't benefit from enchantments like Crusader, this is your best in slot weapon for fighting raid bosses. There is a catch though. There are only 3 charges on it. Oh, that's no big deal, I thought. Surely there is an item you can use on it that recharges the weapon, right? No. There is no such thing. That means that you must farm this boss for the entirety of Classic, if you are even going to do a decent amount of damage. That is horrible. And like salt on the tip, the weapon only has around 33% chance of dropping. You can only farm the dungeon for the weapon 5 times per hour, and too many times I ended up with either only 1 or no weapon at all. And Classic players say that retail is full of chores. All of this feels like you're doing so much for so little. Like, it would be understandable if you did all of this if you wanted to push the extra mile for better parses. But no, this is fucking required. Like, Feral DPS is what the WoW community likes to call a meme spec. And there are unfortunately more than just one in vanilla. Through my leveling journey, I can count on one hand the amount of dungeons I actually played Feral DPS. The rest was either them asking me to go tank or healer, since they didn't have the patience to look for 2 hours for someone who could tank. The tank and healer shortage is indeed a real thing. I was also following a tip that I got to also get some intellect gear in case a dungeon group needed me to heal. Yeah, in case indeed. Yeah, I didn't expect that to be not only the way I played in half of my dungeon runs, but also how I basically was forced to play during way too many of my raids I did with Pugs, Hybris and Exalted. I say basically because sure, I had a choice not to go tank or healer, but that would most likely result in me getting benched. As I said earlier, they let me roll on feral loot and said that I was allowed to go feral once I got better gear. Yeah, thanks guys. The problem is that our precious loot council is not gonna give me the gear until every single raid leader and their mother gets the loot first. But when I finally got gear to go feral, I still had to be 3rd or 4th tank, which basically means if a mob group or a boss has 3 or more mobs, then I had to tank. This meant that basically all trash packs and some bosses I had to tank. I remember the feeling of being able to go cat on Fankris in AQ40 and how good it felt to finally play how I wanted to play. But feral is not the only scuffed spec in Classic. Like, don't get me started on boomkins. Sorry, oomkins. Like, holy shit are they terrible. I gotta wonder how they, along with red paladins, got into raid groups back in the day at all. Oh wait, I do know, because people either didn't know they sucked, or they simply didn't care.
So there's something happening right now in Classic. I can't get a single raid group as a ret paladin, and it's pissing me off.
All you need to do as a mage in PvP, Nova, Polymorph. That's it. If you don't know what to do and you press Polymorph, it's probably a decent idea. Except Druid. Druid is the one exception and nobody plays Druid, so like this is a 99% correct play.
And I know Druid players to be the most deprived minds of all. They try to heal only to be out-healed by everyone else. They try to tank only to be told they're trolling and to re-roll Warrior. They try to melee DPS only to be told they're trolling and to re-roll Warrior. And God can only help you if you're trying to play a Boomkin. Inside the mind of every Druid is a complacent, beaten down, pathetic loser who only knows how to take orders. To be a Druid is to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And when you're a master of none, you should probably just re-roll Warrior.
Just lovely. This is another victim of hashtag no changes. The reason we could not have too many buffs or debuffs in Classic back in the day was due to technical difficulties, but now it's just for the Classic experience. So wave goodbye to having an interesting rotation or being playable at all if you're an Affliction Warlock, Shadow Priest, Feral Druid or Resto Druid, among others with a dot or a hot. Nah, that is for the more important debuffs like all the Warriors Deep Wounds, or other debuffs that will help the Warriors. Or Warlocks if you happen to be lucky enough to be able to play Shadow Priest. So let's say you want to play a Resto Druid that is not just going to spam Healing Touch, but also going to use Rejuvenation and Regrowth. Then you better pray your raid group wipes and loses all your precious world buffs, because only then you can use them. And since Classic is piss easy, at least my guild rarely lost them due to a wipe. And did I mention? If you are 2 or more Resto Druids, only 1 healing over time could be applied per target. So only the most geared Resto Druid gets to keep his or her hots on. The rest can only cry as they spam their precious healing touches. Speaking of world buffs, gathering them was fine, but I didn't like the fact that it was pretty much mandatory, since it gave such a big increase in damage. Especially for a good boy class warrior here. It turned into a weekly chore to gather all the buffs like they were infinity stones needed to clear the raid. It was not too bad to be honest, but I just wish world buffs didn't work in dungeons or raids. I mean, they are called world buffs after all. I really don't mind them existing. I mean, seeing Mattingly yell, "Let the rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer lift your spirits!" and everyone gets the buff in a flash of lightning and the sound of thunder. Yeah, that is cool as fuck. I just feel like it would be cooler to get it on a character that you're leveling rather than your max level character.
Oh, Nick! There we go. Rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer. I got big for Nixia buff. I'm ready to blast.
The biggest problem though is how easily you lose them. Like, I get dying can be a reason, but it's for the fact that they are dispellable. Like, how would you feel if some bitch-ass shaman popped out of his invisibility potion, only to dispel as many world buffs as it could before you eventually killed him off?
Hush, child. The light has shown me the way, and that way requires me to dispel world buffs from idiots like you. So I can feel good about myself despite my numerous insecurities. You wanna talk about it?
Well, that's just part of the game, you might say. Yeah, well, let's just say there's a reason why we got Chrono Boon in the last phase of Classic Vanilla. Way too late in my opinion, but I'm glad Blizzard at least did some changes to make it less tedious. Oh, wait, sorry, I mean...
No changes, Chrono Boon bad, sug.
Now, I think the leveling speed in retail is way too fast, and Blizzard needs to give the leveling journey in retail way more love, because the leveling journey should be a big part of the game, just like the endgame. But the leveling speed in vanilla is, in my opinion, just way too slow.
Classic leveling. It's pure, the way it was meant to be done. But as a counterpoint, TBC killed classic leveling immediately. And you know why? Because classic leveling sucks.
Like, I understand leveling is the best part about the game, but does it really have to take this long? I don't think I'm alone believing this either, since during my classic journey, I've seen people getting boosted through a majority of the leveling journey.
Last extra special amazing boosting service. Do not miss out. Impress your friends. 7 gold per dungeon run. Let's go. Yes, please invite me. I love to pay other people to play the game for me.
Hey man, I'm kinda new too. If you'd like, we can level together.
So anyway, boost me in RFC first. It's so hard to find groups for that anyway.
And on top of that, I see classic streamers or YouTubers use and or even advertise about guide add-ons, such as Rested XP and Zygor. Like, why are we promoting a way to make it to 60 the fastest way possible when the leveling is the best part about the game? I thought the game started at level 1 in Classic. Isn't this what you all don't like about retail? About how hand-holdy it is and how it wants you to reach max level as soon as possible? Then why are people using an add-on that does the exact same thing? I think quests that ask you to retrieve an item from a dungeon is fine, because that gives you another reason to do that dungeon. And it's fine if it's in a capital city, because then you can do other things in the city while you are there. But if it's in a random hut on the other continent that you're on, I'm not really sold.
Oh, you want a quest in Desolus on your Night Elf? Well, have you travelled to the Mage Quarter of Stormwind on the other side of the world to speak to a guy hidden in a tavern in order to do the follow-up where you find Gandalf's sock in Middle-earth? And then have you gone to Desolus in order to unlock half the zone quests? I don't think you have.
It just feels like it takes a long time for the sake of taking a long time, and not like an adventure. Maybe if you don't play with Questy, but come on, we all know you won't play without Questy. It's one of, if not the most downloaded add-on for Classic. The leveling speed makes vanilla not all friendly in the slightest because of how long it takes, which, as for someone who plays on multiple characters, it's not desirable. I think I had like 4 other characters in Classic Vanilla, but they all got to around like level 20 or 30 max. So name me anything more overhyped in Classic Vanilla than World PvP. Everyone, including the guild I was planning to join at launch, was flocking to the PvP servers at launch because of that hype. I think around like 4 or 5 times out of 100 I genuinely had fun. And that was during my guild's so-called buff trains, where an army of me and my guild members stormed the Troll Island to pop Heart of a Car. And sometimes there was a bunch of horde players on the island that we took by surprise, and took over the island, until we got the buff, that is. Then we got summoned to the next world buff spot to get the next buff, but that was about it. All the other times it was no-life, max-level players who ganked my ult who just wanted to level while chanting something along the lines of, "If it's red, it's dead." Yeah, way to go, man. It's not like I can do anything against this.
We have a problem now. No. Like, don't kill me. Come on, bro. Kill him. Come on, kill him, bro. Come on, guys. Come on. No way, bro. But this is what I mean, right? Like, these dudes cannot kill him, so they attack me. Like, they cannot kill a level 60, so they kill me. But you see what I mean? As soon as I make a group of people who will fight back, now they logged out.
But just roll on a PvE server, you might say. Yeah, that's not gonna happen without cross-realm, I'm afraid, since most EU players either settled in Faramall or Kahenas. I prefer having people to play with, so I just had to bite the bullet and deal with it. Thankfully, WoW players realized that World PvP is not fun, and in TBC Classic, they moved to another server where there were too many of the opposite faction to form a so-called mega server, with around 99% of one faction. Yeah, so much for the World PvP hype, guys. Real smooth. This definitely is, in my opinion, a you think you do but you don't worthy thing. This is something I also will meet you classic players halfway on, where I also think retail class rotations have been way too complicated to play right for a long time now, and hopefully the coming Midnight expansion is gonna fix that. But what I hope they don't do is make the class rotations way too easy, or boring even. Like, what the hell is even the mage rotation in Classic? Frostbolt, 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 Frostbolt.
You need to learn your class rotation. Just spam Frostbolt.
Got it. Frostbolt. What else?
That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
And Warlock is not much better. Shadowbolt, Shadowbolt, Shadowbolt. Refresh assigned curse, and then more Shadowbolt, Shadowbolt, Shadowbolt. Now I know you use way more spells in PvP, for example. I mean, Druid PvP is really satisfying to watch when done correctly, but I don't PvP. So all I can go on is how the PvE scene is, and what I have been forced to partake in, like World PvP. Like even a Feral Druid, whose rotation is one of the more complicated ones to play, have a simple rotation, since you can't use all your abilities because of Blizzard's hard-on for #no changes. No rake or rip allowed. Only shred. Shred, shred, and shred, until you have 5 combo points, and then Ferocious Bite. Very fun. Oh yeah, just a quick one that I remembered almost being done with the script, but I'm not a fan of Loot Council. Yeah, it is because I'm playing Feral and hate seeing my base going to rogues, hunters, and even warriors before I finally get to have my go at it. Now imagine me playing a balanced druid. Ho ho ho, no. Yeah, I favor DKP way more, because of the fact that you get points for participating in raids and guild activities, and you eventually get enough points to spend on your item of choice. Like, why should an item go to someone who joined late Burning Crusade and someone who we don't know if he's going to continue into Wrath or not? And not me, who has been in this guild since freaking AQ40 and will most likely be in this guild through Wrath as well. I swear this is just benefiting meta slaves and tryhards who want the loot before the scrubs. I mean, I understand that, but I joined the second raid group for a reason. To not tryhard. To not sweat. I favor participation way more over just being a class that can benefit more getting the item. But that is just me. Alright, I've hated enough on this game, for now at least. So let's take a look at what I like about Classic Vanilla. So not all expansions that World of Warcraft has gotten over the years have been bangers, but what every expansion has gotten right, in my opinion, is the art and the music, and Vanilla is no exception. Vanilla is absolutely among my favorites, from the jungles of Stranglethorn to the enchanted forest of Teldrassil. The music blends so well with the zone and its atmosphere. Everyone remembers their first time stepping through the Stormwind gates and stand up in their chair for the Alliance national anthem. Like, just listen to the Tanari's music and how it really fits the big wasteland theme the zone has. What I think the most memorable music is, though, is the starting zone music. Teldrassil will forever feel like a second home to me, and has a very special place in my heart. And the other themes are no worse. The Elven Forest and the Durotar music has taken many dad gamers back to their teenage years. The music in World of Warcraft really is iconic. Speaking of iconic... As much as I don't like the late game leveling in Vanilla, I must admit there are a lot of memorable quests in the game. One that comes to mind is the Green Hills of Stranglethorn quest, designed by the one and only, where you must finish a poor dwarf's book. You do that by finding all the missing pages, which you find from mobs all over Stranglethorn Vale. You put them together in their respective chapters and then turn them in when you got all 4 chapters. It is too bad you can just buy the pages off the auction house, and most of the classes are not gonna be able to use the jungle boots you get.
I will never be able to equip that.
So at most you're just going to get 31 silver and some experience. Oh sorry, I was supposed to talk about the good parts of a classic, my bad. Screw hashtag no changes though. Blizzard could have at least made the pages bind up pickup to prevent players from just buying every page. Oh, did someone say Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker? Or perhaps Sulfuras, Atiesh, or Corrupted Ashbringer? Items so iconic that we still remember to this day, and that people still are farming in retail for transmog. Well, maybe not Corrupted Ashbringer or Atiesh, but due to its unique and cool appearance, people still want Thunder Fury, even if it's just to sit in your bank. As much of a grind and luck you need to get the weapons, you really feel good getting them. I never got them, but I can imagine how it feels getting all the pieces you need to finally put together Atiesh. It would be cool if you could put the weapons you have collected in your house in retail. Now, as much as I personally think that the game should be able to be enjoyed solo, playing with friends is always going to be way more fun in World of Warcraft, no matter what version of the game you play. Personally, I think that nothing will ever beat leveling alts with your friends and getting them geared together. World of Warcraft is a multiplayer game after all. I've made friends in Classic that I still talk to this day, and it really has made the journey enjoyable and worth it. Due to how long everything takes in Classic, it is really a great place to start for new players. You have plenty of time to get used to the controls and to learn about your spells on your bars. Retail really needs to step up on introducing the game to new players, and not just cast them into Dragonflight where you have a story that requires you to know some lore before jumping into. Most new players just won't know who Rathian is unless you have played from either Cata, MoP or BFA. As much as I don't like the one-button rotation that Classic is offering when raiding, it is still more beginner-friendly than reading paragraph upon paragraph on how to optimize your single target rotation in retail. Hands down, the early game is the best part about Classic Vanilla. What is one of our most precious memories from back in the day? That's right, questing in Elven Forest or Durotar or wherever you started your journey. The leveling speed in this part of the game is perfect, and the quests are fun. It really feels like you're making a steady progress towards your leveling goal. I could almost say the same for 20 to 30, but I feel like that's where things start to slow down significantly. And let's not talk about 30 to 40 or even 40 and onward. But that is just me. One thing I feel like most of us can agree on, however, is that the starting zones is the best leveling experience you will ever have in the game. That's all for Vanilla Classic. Don't get me wrong, it was a fun enough time. My guild that I ended up playing with through my entire Classic journey made it worth it. But I really think people are overhyping the chase for the vanilla experience a bit, and don't realize that it just isn't 2004 anymore, and there is not much current Blizzard can do to fix it, other than maybe release a good version of Classic Plus. All the magic about the game is gone for me, since everything is solved and can just easily be looked up. You can't bring certain specs to raid since they suck absolute donkey dick. Some specs like Arcane Mage doesn't even exist, since it's only a utility tree for mages. Class rotations are boring. Everything takes forever to do. Even a simple task as sending mail and receiving it takes an entire hour. And it is all because Blizzard listened to the people who shouted hashtag no changes. Like I said before, this is just my opinion. I know this is for many the best version of the game, but I just do not see it. I want to play a Resto Druid because I want to, not because I have to. And that is something that retail does way better. Sure, there's a meta in retail too, but in retail you can at least argue that the difference between the best and the worst spec is most of the time not that big, and that it comes down to how good you are as a player. You know, bring the player, not the class. That cannot be said for Classic. I can't argue bringing a balanced druid over a mage, because the difference in damage is just night and day. Of course no one wants to bring a balanced druid, because even if you are one of the best balanced druid in the world, the average mage is still going to do more damage. Why would anyone bring you? There are some good things about vanilla, as I was covering before, but the bad things are just way too overwhelming for my taste. I would say vanilla World of Warcraft is a solid B on a tier list. It's passable if you have some nice friends to play with, but in my opinion, it's absolutely not the best version of the game. One thing that kept me from quitting Classic, however, is the announcement of a certain green-themed expansion filled with demons and sexy space coats. Burning Crusade is the first version of WoW I played in my young private server days. I immediately became a fan of Illidan, Kel'Thas, Outland's many locations, and who could forget that special poop quest in Nagrand. TLDR, I like the expansion. And just like vanilla, I never got to experience how you were supposed to play, since again I played on different private servers that wasn't exactly Bliss-like. So I was excited to see the content again and to see if the hype was true. I was excited to take the fight to Outland and to slay some demons. And following class videos, I got even more hyped, since classes are finally getting some love that they so desperately needed in vanilla. Balanced Druid and Elemental Shamans can finally raid without going home after 5 spells, and Red Paladins are no longer just a glorified auto-attack simulator. Rogue players, I do not feel bad for you for being a bad class in TBC. I just look at you and go, first time? I hope you were planning to PvP, because Burning Crusade PvP is apparently not even a competition, and it's beyond broken.
First thing I did, I went and messaged Mir. I said, hey, what's it like dueling in TBC? Because I need to know, is this tournament possible? And Mir, I asked him for the God's honest truth, and Mir is one of the best TBC players, period, and he plays a rogue. He's like, listen, TBC dueling sucks. I can beat every single person, every class with my hands tied behind my back, because rogues are way too fucking OP.
So my plan was to level a Draenei Shaman to have as my first alt character, and leveled her up to 60 during pre-patch. We only had 2 weeks, so I stepped up my game for a while so she could be ready for the launch day. I leveled her in Teldrassil because I heard that you needed to be exalted with an alliance faction that isn't your own to be able to buy the mounts from them, and I did not want to ride around in a big-ass Alec. Sabers all the way, baby. Around this time, I joined a dedicated pug raid group which was ran by 2 of my guildmates, and they were focusing on progression, but focused also more on having fun. As much fun as you can have with a pug group, that is. And hey, I like having fun, so I joined them. We ran raids all the way up until ICC in Classic RAF. I will talk more about the group in RAF Classic as well, but Burning Crusade Classic is where it all started for me. And I have to say that running Karazhan and Suleiman with this group was the best time I've ever had in Classic TBC. 10-mans are just so much fun when you run them with the boys. Later on, a good friend of mine started playing Classic WoW as well. Him and I started leveling alts together. He later joined the pug group and has been playing with us all the way until the pug group eventually disbanded. Leveling alts together really made me realize how much fun WoW is when playing with friends, but it also introduced me to the bad parts about leveling together in Classic. For example, if you're on a quest where you need to collect 10 bear asses, now you need to collect 20 since you don't share the bear asses you find like you do in retail. It makes it take much longer than it needs to be, and it really makes it a chore if the items you need has a low drop chance. Around phase 2 of TBC Classic, the Alliance went over to Firemaw and the Horde players went over to Gehennas, due to one faction being around double the amount of the other, which made World PvP really not fun. I didn't like it in the first place, but this is where all the people also realized it. People started to prioritize playing with more people over being in a server where for every fellow player you had, the other faction had 2 players. TLDR, people realized that World PvP is only fun when you are on the winning side. Burning Crusade is also the expansion where I got to play more DPS rather than just being a 4th tank. Sure, sometimes I was asked to... sometimes I was asked to tank. I was asked to tank. Sure, sometimes the raid leader asked me to tank, but this time around I had become more comfortable with tanking. The raids were so much more interesting, and the class rotations as well. Although we are still kind of in the spam Frostbolt territory, the rotations were at least better than in vanilla. Now I actually got to use my rip, and Mangle was introduced, which meant more buttons to press. But Rake was unfortunately not really used outside of PvP due to its low damage, and Ferocious Bite was only used on low-level enemies. And Ferocious Bite was only used on low health due to the high increase in armor on raid bosses. Power shifting was unfortunately still a thing, but I've gotten used to it at this point. It was better than the vanilla rotations for sure, but it was not perfect yet. So, what was my personal positives and negatives about the Burning Crusade? Let's get into it. Yeah, I get it. Resistance gear makes sense for an RPG game, but I just think it does way too little in WoW. It was a thing in Next 40, but I never played that raid, so I can't really say how Saffron was like, but I can say how Mother was on BT. You had to get the maximum Shadow Rest for that fight, and even then you took a ton of damage from her abilities. Why? I mean, think about it for a second. Let's say I create an RPG character and max all my points into Frost Resist. Every other stat will be dogshit, but since I maxed my Frost Resist, I expect to take next to no frost damage at all from now on. I don't expect to still take a ton of frost damage and at the same time have no stats that boost my health or damage. I mean, what's the point? I can understand getting some shadow resistance pieces to help the healers so I don't take too much damage, but the fact that you have to have a full shadow rest set to not die from that fight is so dumb in my opinion. It should be optional, not required, and if I max out my shadow resistance, I sure as hell should not take as much damage as I did. So the attunements were fun. Once. The questlines to unlock Karazhan and the other raids was really nice. It was just very long, and I just wish they were account wide. I guess it is designed this way so more players run heroic dungeons and older raids, because you have to do them in order to get the quest items required to reach the next raid. But I felt that this really was not alt friendly whatsoever. It did not make me want to level more alts other than my shaman just for this reason. Only one had to get the Karazhan key so the entire raid could get in though. But at the same time, people figured out a way to go through the Kara instance without unlocking the gate at all, in case no one had the key, so that should tell you what people thought about attunements. Heroic dungeons being unlocked by reaching Revered with the zone-related faction was also a drag on replay. Thankfully, Blizzard took it down to only requiring Honor later in the expansion, but I felt that this was one of my #some changes that should have been in from the start. Don't get me wrong, I liked having my shaman being wanted for raiding, but the fact that you needed one for every group was a bit much. Like, would it kill you to let everyone in the raid get the hero or lust, instead of only the raid group you were in? It had no debuffs, so sometimes you even switched another shaman to a group with the pumpers so they could get a second heroism. Ballast indeed.
Let's talk about ballasts. What does a ballast do? Now, there's basically two types of ballasts. There's an ballast, and there's a ballast.
It just really sucked if you got a shaman that didn't use the totems that you could make use of. For example, if you're a rogue and happens to be in a spellcasting group, you will not get Wind Fury totem from the shaman. Group-wide buffs feel so outdated, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it was only a thing in Burning Crusade, and it stayed only a thing in Burning Crusade for a reason. It is not really a hot take, but Mount Hyjal might be one of my least favorite raids of all time, simply for the boring ass wave mechanic. It really is a raid that looks good on paper, and it is a blast from the past from the Warcraft 3 days. But it should have been translated better into WoW because this is tedious as all hell. And not to mention, if you somehow wiped on a boss or any of the waves, you had to start from the last checkpoint, which is the last boss you killed. Fun. I think the only good part about the raid is the staff that drops, which is in my opinion the best looking druid staff in the classic trilogy. But otherwise, yeah, this raid sucks. So flying is a very hot topic among the classic community. Some swear it kills World PvP, although it was kind of dead to begin with, and some really likes it because it makes it easier to farm materials in the world. Something about flying that I don't like though is the first tier of flying, which gives you the ability to ride flying mounts but only at 60% speed. 60%! 6%. For a damn flying mount. It's called expert riding, doesn't it? It should have been at least 100%. Most of the time, it makes it more worth riding your 100% ground mount to somewhere or taking a flight path, because it just goes quicker that way. The only use of the 60% mount is really just to reach the Tempest Keep dungeons, where you have to have a flying mount. Unless you have a warlock, of course. Absolutely useless. Now, one of the reasons warriors were the best tank in vanilla was because they all were also the best DPS. More damage equals more threat. This is still a thing in Burning Crusade, but this time warriors are not the king of damage anymore. Actual DPS classes are, which is how it's supposed to be in my opinion. But this also means that if you get some bad parries or dodges at the start as a tank, the pumpers are really going to be in a world of hurt. And with the tricks of the trade not being a thing yet and misdirection only been active for 3 attacks from the hunter, it makes it not much easier. This again feels like it was only a problem in TPC. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now this was mostly due to me leveling the rest of my alts during Wrath, but the leveling in Outland is not something I enjoyed after like the 4th time. You just have way too few choices when it comes to areas to level, so I always just went with the same old route I enjoyed the most, which is not leveling through Blade's Edge Mountains. Nah, this place just isn't it for me in comparison to the rest of the Outland zones, especially without a flying mount. Leveling with my friend through Terracar Forest reminded me once again of why everyone in the group should share the quest items. They drop so rarely and you have to get double the amount of them because you are leveling with someone. I got my mage to 70 as well as my druid and shaman, leveling with my friend, so I got one more to max level I guess. Didn't do much with my mage after that sadly. It really helped that the amount of XP required to level in Outland got reduced in the classic Wrath pre-patch, because even after the XP reduction you still have enough quests in the continent to reach level 70. Boomkin's Red Paladins, the DPS Shaman specs and Shadow Priests are finally playable, but unfortunately it's not perfect yet. Frost Mage is considered a PvP only spec and so is Assassination and Sub-Rogue. Like I get it, Rogue is the king of PvP, but being locked to only one spec for PvE is boring to me. I'm looking at you, Vanilla. Grrr. Hi guys, editor Night Purple here who just wants to squeeze in a little message before I talk about this. So apparently the boost is here for Anniversary Burning Crusade as well, and while I'm sad that they did it, I see more and more classic streamers buying a boost themselves, which has me a bit confused.
This is an impulse buy? Brother, I need another character on Alliance. It's been a blast.
This communal war maul that we have, the weapon, this communal war maul that we have, this is the boosted weapon, is insane.
I mean, when it first came out in 2021, even Asmongold said,
I mean, I'm gonna use my character boost 100%. I'm gonna level Paladin. I'm gonna level Paladin, I'm a fucking tank. It's gonna be so, I cannot wait, man.
But still, I thought classic players overall was more against this. This is one of the more greater reasons why they play Classic and not Retail after all. To be fair, I am still playing Retail despite it having boosts, but I don't buy boosts. And I thought more Classic players who are against the boost would do the same, but here they are boosting away. I just want to say that I'm fine with it, but if this is what Classic has turned into, then you as a Classic player cannot for the life of you use the Retail as boost, so therefore it is worse than Classic argument anymore. It needs to stop, because clearly you are fine with it as well in Classic, so it cannot be that bad. So TLDR, I am confused about Classic streamers and Classic players boosting, but I'm fine with it, as long as they stop using boosting as an argument for why Retail sucks. Also, I am aware that I'm a bit harsh with talking about people who are buying WoW tokens and boosts, but it's still... I still stand by this, even though that I'm still playing Retail despite it being there. I'm just sick of hearing people complain about boosting and then they boost themselves. Like that's all. Anyway, back to the video. Oh, you thought I forgot about this one, huh? How could I forget the reason for /bit being changed? Now, my opinion about a store being in WoW is I prefer it didn't exist, and that the things that Blizzard sells should be earnable in-game. But if it is just cosmetics, I'm not too fussed about it. It is just a cosmetic. It won't make you stronger in any way. It's just looks. But what I do find bad about the store is the pay-to-progress items, being the WoW token and the boost. And with Burning Crusade Deluxe Edition, you get a mount, a Hearthstone effect, a toy that gives you Felfire footprints, and you guessed it, a level boost. Only one per account, but still. Imagine wanting to skip a big part of the game. As much as I don't like the leveling in Vanilla Azeroth, I still did it, because that's part of the game. It is even worse in retail, because you can buy as many boosts as you want, and the leveling really doesn't take a long time at all. So there is even a bigger reason not to buy a boost. Can you really not be bothered to take a couple of days to level? It's kind of pathetic if you ask me. At least people who install Cygor or Arrested XP is still leveling. Even if they are only going the fastest route, they are still leveling. At that point I would say WoW is not the game for you if you can't be bothered to level. You're the reason Blizzard keeps adding these microtransactions, because you buy them like there's no tomorrow. But these are the negatives that I can think of right now for Burning Crusade. It is time for the good soup. Good soup. Holy hell, Karazhan is fun. Holy shit, Sulamon is fun. Holy Lidari, Black Temple is fun, minus the mother fight of course. Holy Paladin, which isn't a raid but they are still pretty neat I guess. Holy damn, Serpent Shrine Cavern is fun. Post-nerf, fight me. Holy purple, you forgot Hyjal. I forgot Hyjal, you say? Well, that's because Hyjal is Hyjal, and I already talked about why it doesn't belong here, so screw you, sucker. What you say? I didn't do Sunwell, unfortunately, because once again the difficulty spike from Black Temple was too high for my liking, and people optimized the comps too much, so Feral DPS was unfortunately benched. At least I was. Orange Parses only, bucko. Was not a huge loss, though, because I've always seen Illidan as the last boss of the Burning Crusade, and I always saw Sunwell like an extra raid, like Ruby Sanctum was in Wrath. Yeah, I know it's not the same thing, but whatever. Despite this, without glazing too much, I had so much fun raiding in Burning Crusade. I owe most of the praise to my RuPa group. Oh mama, this could have been so much better. I mean, on paper, jewel crafting sounds so much fun. You put extra stats of your choosing on your gear. Yeah, of the choosing of icy veins, more like. But despite of this meta-chasing bullshit that we had to endure, jewel crafting is still a fun profession, and a decent gold maker. At least it was until the raw gem is selling for more than the actual sought-after cut gem. Like, how the hell is that even possible? Also, I like it way more that only some gear like tier sets have gem slots, and not like it is in retail where you have to put the gem slot on your gear yourself. The gear kind of feels less special that way. Man, if there's anything I'm gonna glaze in any WoW expansion, it's going to be the music, and holy hell the music. The Karazhan music that goes to the Shadow Moon Valley music that goes What am I doing with my life, man? Kinda makes me feel bad because apparently it is supposed to be the crying of the Draenei that died when Gul'dan did the dirty with Fel magic on the zone. I mean, just listen to it. Very spooky. Exodar and Silvermoon, despite still being a zone where you can't fly in, also has a killer soundtrack. You have Exodar that goes and Silvermoon showing its majestic sigh like ba 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 ba. I want to cover them all, but I really want this video to be done soon, so let me know if I should talk more about the music of WoW. 40-man raiding, you won't be missed, sorry. Okay, maybe a little, but both from a raider who wants at least one piece of loot every 6 months. I know, way too much to ask, and I assume a lot of raid leaders. 25-man is way better, and 10-man is just an absolute blast if you have your boys on your team. I guess one bad thing compared to vanilla is that 40-man is more puggable, because it does not really matter if you suck ass. If you die, only you die, and the raid group can still kill the boss. Most of the time, in my experience, this is true for the entire Classic Trilogy, but Burning Crusade and Wrath definitely had more mechanics that if one fucks up, the entire raid dies. So in conclusion, Burning Crusade was in my opinion still not perfect, but was still a way better experience than vanilla. There are some things to be desired, like attunements being account wide for me to enjoy the expansion to the fullest. I guess if you only play 1 or 2 characters like I did, it gets better, but I could not get myself to level more characters until we went from the Fellfire Hot expansion to the infamous Ice Cold expansion we all know and love. The third and final part of the Classic Trilogy is Wrath of the Lich King. Like Burning Crusade, I played only on private servers during Wrath and didn't get any of the Bliss-like experience, so color me hyped when Wrath Classic got announced. Don't color me surprised though, because since we got Burning Crusade Classic, Wrath was pretty much a given. Raid-wise, it was front-loaded in Phase 1 with the re-released Naxxramas, Eye of Eternity and the Obsidian Sanctum, and it went all the way through ICC and lastly the Ruby Sanctum. It was one hell of a fun time for a raider like me. And unlike Burning Crusade, which funneled every player into one zone in Outland, Wrath had both Boring Tundra and Howling Fjord to choose from as a starting point. Yes, I said Boring Tundra. I mean, who would pick that zone over Howling Fjord? Come on, man. The leveling was sweet, and like the cherry on top, we got the one and only Wrathgate cutscene at the end of the Dragonblight campaign. It was at this point where the leveling speed was just right for me. Might have been because of the heirlooms being added, but still the best in my book. The Death Knight starting campaign is just as nice as I remembered it. The assault on Lightsoap Chapel really gets you in the immersive mode, unless the quest bugs, that is, which it did sometimes. Multi-dollar company indeed. This is the time where I actually got to do what I wanted to do from the start. Level 1 of every class to max level, and raid with them as much as I could, but I wanted to be realistic and I added only my Frost Death Knight to my roster of raiding characters among my druid and shaman. The rest comes second. It took some time, and for most I waited until I gathered all the heirlooms for every armor type. Most of them I leveled alongside my friend. Achievements were introduced, which gave you a reason to go out and do other things than just raiding and professions, and some achievements rewarded you handsomely, like even a cool mount. Okay, a lot of achievements were gained through raiding and professions, but you know what I mean. Speaking of raids, the raids were really fun, and since Ulduar had Valinir, there was always a reason to go back to it. Until it was my shaman's turn, that is. Yeah, I got one run and I got 4 pieces of Valinir, and then there were no more Ulduar signups. I really wish the fragments dropped on 10-man, because then I could at least bring my pug group to Ulduar, who would definitely be down to do some runs to finish it. Oh yeah, I also went resto on my shaman for Wrath, because I heard that elemental shamans was not really going to scale well as the raid tiers progressed. So I said, fuck it, I am going healer. Healing in Wrath was actually fun, and you really felt like you did some nice chunky healing with your spells, unlike a future expansion, spoiler alert. But yeah, I never finished Valinir because I'm not a raid leader, especially not for 25-man. If only it dropped in 10-man. Hashtag some changes. Speaking of Ulduar, it really felt like it got overhyped to space as one of the best raids of all time. Yet people got bored of it way too quickly. It didn't help that a certain heroic plus got introduced in Wrath Classic. More on that soon. I also have to talk about a few things about feral druids that happened in Wrath. Firstly, the glyph that we got was crazy. Free Omen of Clarity procs from Fairy Fire? Easy top DPS in the lair, my little piece of shito.
Have a nice one, my little piece of shito.
The thing is that I knew this was not how Feral was supposed to be played, and soon it would be removed. And I got so used to getting free procs that I felt like I played worse in Cata. It truly was a double-edged sword, but it was fun while it lasted. The second thing is bear weaving. Simply, while you wait for your energy to come back, you go into bear form to do some damage, and then you shift back into cat when your energy has returned. It was around a 2% DPS increase, and I have to say, I never tried it, never felt the need. I finally was free from the power shifting curse, and I was not going to be cursed again. And third was flower weaving. This was at least somewhat manageable, and I at least did it sometimes when I felt like I might as well. You just cast Gift of the Wild before you go into cat form before the fight starts, and you will have an Omen of Clarity ready to go for your opener. Later on into the expansion, there was an update basically making bear weaving useless, which I initially celebrated. Now no one can force me into bear weaving, since it's not really worth it anymore. What I later come to realize is that this made it more boring for the tryhards in my guild. And to be fair, I was never forced into bear weaving. I was just so battle scarred from power shifting that I thought I was gonna have to bear weave to keep my spot in the raid. But as I said, I was never forced to do it. And if you want to have cheese mechanics that you can do if you want to push your damage 1 or 2 extra%, you should be able to have that option. And realizing that kinda made me feel bad for the tryhards. As long as it isn't required, I'm fine with mechanics like bear weaving, power shifting and so on. Both casuals and tryhards are happy. Around this expansion I also started to record my raids. First it was for educational purposes to see what I could improve on and what actually went wrong during a wipe. But it turned more into a meme recorder where I got some sounds for our guild's Discord, and I also recorded every speech of everyone getting the legendary weapon. But I also realized later that I could use the footage for this very video.
Vi kan köra...
Och kör de portaler här så kan alla casters gå in och ställa sig i melee range så de inte behöver ducka för flames.
Ja. Nu pullar vi, kör vi.
Ja, nu jävlar klimatförnekarna laddar bössan.
Dagmar, vi tankar här för den här.
Alltså vi drar dem till oss.
Ja, i och med att den hoppar typ på...
Ja. Vad sa ni nu?
Jag tänker inte ta det igen.
Du drar ut målen?
Ja.
Hitta.
Känner inte så, Hedningen, men nu sitter alla och väntar på att du ska få tummen ut ur det jävla rövhålet. Sätt igång och spika
det är nice då känner man sig viktig här liksom. Alla väntar på en.
Även rullstolens hjul måste pumpas ibland.
Vad har ni lärt er alla dessa uttrycken alltså?
Nej, det är efter att man har varit med om traumatiska upplevelser med Hedningen.
Jag hör det.
Traumatiska upplevelser. Ja.
Alltså vi körde en Walling Caverns i sådd med Hedningen. Och Crazy höll på fan mig för hjärtfnor.
Nej men det kan ju inte döda honom nu, han har mycket att säga till.
Det är inte snabbare.
Väggel har vi kontakt. Malmö-Kristianstad har vi kontakt. Hjälp första staren. Överkom.
It's not the best though, since when I look back at how my UI looked, it really isn't the best, so I apologize for that. I blame 2 things. Having to use weak auras, and also I didn't know UI scaling exists. But yeah, I hope it isn't too distracting. But anyway, let's get into the positives and negatives. Now this is a minor negative, and I could just not have gone through with this like I did in Classic Vanilla. But in pre-patch there were PvP weapons that I was aiming to get for my level 70 Death Knight. This was just a minor thing though, and it didn't take too long to complete. What follows is not just a minor thing though. I really do not like being forced to do stuff, much less PvP, which I had to do to get seasonal achievements like with a little helper from my friends, which you do during the Winter Veil season. You need to get 50 honorable kills as a little helper, and you only have 1 shot because if you die, you have to leave the BG and go back to Dalaran to turn yourself into a little helper again. And to add salt to the wound, if you enter cat form or any other form, you lose the costume. So I had to respec to Resto, stay in the backlines healing, and hope I would not get focused, which happened way too often. Like imagine being an actual PvPer, seeing all these nubs in PvE gear going for these achievements only to leave after. Can't be fun. Like the Loveful Pity achievement, which includes you putting a Loveful dummy and do /pity on it in 2 PvP zones, the Blacksmith building in Arathi Basin and in Wintergrasp. Like again, imagine as a PvP player seeing all these PvEers rushing to Blacksmith, putting down their damn Loveful, pity it, and then leave the battleground. Can't be fun. Okay, listen to me, Blizzard. If you're going to listen to the no changes bullshit, stick to it, for crying out loud. Really? No random dungeon finder? The people who are really against it are probably playing an era at this point anyway. It would be better if they said that they are going to introduce it in ICC like how they did in late 2009. But nah, they really want the classic Andes to stay. RDF, in my opinion, should have been in from the start, since we have always gone with the latest patch in Classic, and only released the raids in phases like it was back in the day. But again, I'm fine with them waiting until ICC. I was just mad they considered it not to be a thing at all. It was there in RAF, so it should be there in RAF Classic. But that ruins the Classic experience. You want to no changes? This is no changes. I understand that RDF makes the game feel less social, but hear me out on this. What if they remove the teleporting? You still get queued into a group, but now you have to actually go to the dungeon with your group to play it. Sure, everyone would just want to summon, but that happened with what we got anyway, so I really don't see a problem with the grouping at least being queued. Like, screw spamming LFG chat, I'm serious, fuck that shit. But now Blizzard was trying something new, a group finder tool. Great, I thought at first. The one we have in retail is solid, and I guess it's going to make everyone happy with me not having to filter out all the LFG spam, and classic players actually wanting to choose who they want to play with, even though you could still make your own groups even if RDF is still a thing, but as I said, now everyone is happy. Until I realized Blizzard is so scared of baking in anything from retail into classic and decided to reinvent the wheel. Like, what the fuck is this shit, man?
Onto the parts where I think there are problems. You can list your class as a role you cannot do. Why is this a thing? If I'm a warlock, why can I set myself as a healer? What am I going to be creating health stones and handing out bandages? In fact, if I list myself as a role my class cannot do, it just says no roles have been filled on the UI. I don't see why this exists.
Just import the retail one. Is it really that hard? It got slightly better over time, but is this really making it worth not having RDF? I personally don't think so.
Told you so, by the way. Told you so, by the way. Oh, told you so, by the way.
Okay, relax, Asmongold. It was gonna happen sooner or later. This is current Blizzard we're talking about. Why combat bot farmers and RMT sites when you can just make a legal way of buying gold?
Of course! It's so simple. I'm not following you.
Have you lost your damn mind, Blizzard? GDKPs are not fun because of this. The budget you have to even enter is atrocious. You have to buy gold, basically. And to be a carry, you have to basically be fully pissed. Well, that makes sense, I guess, but that also means that I can't join with any of my characters other than my main, who already has everything. GDKP would be so much better if RMT was not as big as it is now. Jesus Christ, I guess I'll stick to SR pugs. I'm not just mad at Blizzard and the bots for this, because there clearly are buyers who can't for the life of them play the game because they don't have time. Well then, this game isn't for you. You're ruining the economy for everyone just because you can't be bothered to play the game, and you have to have someone playing it for you. It's your money, but can you at least use it in a way that only affects you? Like buying a store mount? Ah, shit. Yeah, I don't like Heroic Plus. It's nice with some catch-up, but can we at least make it so that it doesn't make the raids irrelevant? Now people are just spamming dungeons and buy raid gear from the current raid here. Like, where is the RPG progression experience here? I thought running my alts through Naxx and Ulduar was fun as hell. It gave it more gameplay variation. For example, I really liked playing my priest in Naxx because I got to see how the mind control mechanic was like during the Instructor Vesuvius fight. But nah, right now we are just trying to do Mythic Plus light and make everyone spam dungeons like there is no tomorrow. This is partially why I couldn't finish my Valenir, because you could just buy Ulduar gear. Hard mode Ulduar gear, I might add. And you didn't have to dip a single toe in the raid.
Which is boring.
I would rather them adding loot or currency to the older raids, so people aren't just making raid groups for the latest raid. Heroic dungeons should stay as something you do to get pre-raid, nothing else. Now this is a small quick one, but I don't like that you get loot based on if you play 10 man or 25 man. Cata and onwards did it so much better with 10-man and 25-man dropping the same loot, but 25-man just dropped more loot. Now I am forced to play either 25-man or 10-man because only there will my actual biz drop. There was a 10-man biz list for people who only planned on playing 10-man, which is nice, but I was going for full biz in RAF. In short, as I have said before, I don't like the game forcing me to do something I might not want to do, and this is unfortunately one of them. But enough negatives, let's see about those positives. But before we go into the positives, I have to include something that I couldn't put into either the positive or the negative category. So I decided to make a neutral category for this one, and that is... Now, I don't see much difference between gear score and item level, so I can't say I'm not too unfamiliar with the concept, but it was one of those things where I heard so many negatives about and that it should not be a thing, so I was not worried about it being a thing this time, but man oh man was I wrong. The main negative is how gatekeepy people are with it. Like, holy shit, why do you have to be that geared to run fucking Nax? It's fucking Nax 25, man. I think we still be able to clear it. Like, are we expecting you to be older or geared to run Nax? That's just stupid. Why do you think I'm here? Why do you think I'm running Nax? I want the gear from it. But the positive thing is that, as I said, I'm already familiar with it due to item level being a thing in retail. I see it as a much better way of telling how geared you are rather than saying that I am mostly Molten Core geared with some BWL and AQ20 pieces. The problem is that the raid leaders are so scared of getting horrible players that they are judging them solely based on the gear that they are wearing and nothing else. As if winning loot in World of Warcraft takes skill. Well, that's all about gear score. Let's talk about positives. Finally, a proper rotation. Not too complicated, but not a simple button snooze fest. Fun mechanics like trap weaving that makes classes more fun to play. Ferals could finally use Rake, and as I covered already, Feral Druid were crazy with the new glyph. Death Knights were fun and felt better than I thought to play. I was worried the mixed runes were gonna ruin it since I was only used to one rune type for Death Knights in retail, but it worked out pretty nicely after all. This is easily the best class design in the Classic Trilogy. There were unfortunately still specs that weren't really played in PvE, like Frost Mage, and some things just didn't make sense, like why is my Frost Death Knight in Blood Presence and not in Frost Presence? Hello? Amigo? What else can I say other than this is how classes should have played in vanilla? Yeah, fight me, Classic purists. Man was the first tier of raiding fun. I hate to glaze Nax 25 too much, but come on. I didn't do Nax 40, but seeing how hard it was and how much you needed to prepare for it, Nax 25 just hits better for me. No stupid frost resist requirement, and the raid encounters were so much fun. Dancing with Hegan the Unclean, fighting Maxna the huge enemy spider, learning how electricity works with Thaddeus, and of course the big KT fight. A snooze fest for some, but this is the difficulty I like. Obsidian Sanctum was also nice. A scalable fight depending on how... fight depending on how many drakes you killed before fighting Zartharion. In my guild we did all the different difficulties in a nice pace and didn't go all in too fast until we got better gear, which was nice. Eye of Eternity was not the best, but not the worst either. The vehicle combat was just hard because no one wanted to do the healing. Thank you, parts and community. So a lot of wipes were just unnecessary. Now Oldor is a bit of a mixed bag for me. It was fun, but man was it hard at first. And for only one extra piece of gear? Hard mode was for the most part just wasted potential. It could have been fun, but I think the difficulty difference didn't match up with the extra loot we got. Also, Oldar might be the most overhyped raid in Warcraft's history. Here we have a raid that so many people see as the best in the franchise, and then people get bored so quickly. Like what? I don't have my Valanir yet. Don't stop now. But it is like Garrus said, times do change. I gotta say, I love the way Sarah says minions though. Our pug group memed on it multiple times.
Focus your anger and hatred on his minions.
Minions. Trial of the Crusader was in my opinion also fine, but I remember my friend who I leveled up with was so surprised on how short it was. Unfortunately, this was before I started record my raids, but yeah, it is surprisingly short. I think the RP, while being a bit annoying after a while, does make up for there being no trash, and you can instead talk tactics or joke around in the raid group. It would be a bit hectic if the fights happen one after the other like the Northern Beast fight, but for every boss in the raid. Now, as I'm writing this in the script, I can't help but think it might be a fun challenge to do just that. A bit late now, but one can always dream. ICC was just right. I'm glad Blizzard decided to release the full raid rather than one wing at a time like they did back in OG RAF. Heroics were hard but not too hard except for Syndragosa and the Lich King. Holy hell did we have problems here. This might have been one of the few times at least I heard my guild leader say that he paused his music to say that we have to wake the fuck up and play properly.
Shit kom till raiden nu.
Disco kommer att springa.
Bakom, vad händer?
Jag vill inte springa för långt för höger för Svante var där. Det var folk som sprang efter mig.
Shit, står inte nära den.
Ja.
Nära.
Jag fick den.
Men varför har vi 15 block i den fasen varje gång? Kan vi flytta oss därifrån? Det här är bara dumt.
Ja, nu ska jag vara lite hård med här. Nu har jag stängt av min diskomusik. Lyfter i helvete blicken och se vad som händer. Vi kan inte ha 5-6 stycken som soakar iceblocks. För då kommer vi sitta och göra loot chip tills denna fasen är över. Nu får ni fan ta och skärpa er alltså.
It was tough, but eventually, like all bosses, people eventually got it right, and before we knew it, everything was on farm. I never got to defeat Heroic Lich King though, only normal, and even in Cata pre-patch we could not get it down. But this was mainly due to at least one person every week lying that they have played and know the mechanics, only to say flat out, I've never done the Lich King even once. What? We are in fucking Cata pre-patch? And you're gonna tell me that you haven't done the Lich King even on normal? And you expect to be able to clear Heroic Lich King? What a fucking leech, man. I didn't do Ruby's Sanctum, but not for the reasons I didn't do Sunwell on X40. I just didn't feel like raiding it. I maybe did it once or twice, but it was just not fun enough. And Cataclysm was just around the corner, so the motivation was just not there. Overall though, I had a great time and learning the fights was fun. I loved the themes and the locations, and it was just a hell of a good time, especially with my pug group. Just for the fact that I could finally level up my characters to max in a reasonable amount of time makes this expansion the best one in terms of alt friendliness. Most of them I leveled up with my friend as well, which made it 10 times better. Due to Nax 25 and Oldar being simple raids to understand, I could raid with most of my alts with no problems at all. But I realized that raiding on Heroics was not on the map for most of my alts, and on top of it, Heroic Plus was introduced, so I was forced to only gear up my alts through the Heroic Plus dailies. It was fine, I guess, but I just think raiding is more fun than doing dungeons. At least some of the time I did them with my guildmates, which made it better, I guess. It was simple because everyone just did the Forge of Souls because it had no affixes and was relatively short, so it was easy currency for us. Also, no attunements, except for the Eye of Eternity, which only one had to have the key for, and every time at least one player had it, so I did not have to do it, just how I like it. Since this is the final expansion where I raid with my pug group before it got disbanded, I want to talk about them and how much they have meant to me in my journey. They made Classic an unforgettable experience. My guild was a foundation of this, and they deserve credit too, but my pug group was the strawberry jam on my pancakes. They were a group where I was comfortable enough to actually joke around and not get a clear comms.
Alright, clear comms. Dude. Clear comms.
Wiping wasn't just someone getting yelled at. We sometimes screwed around when a wipe was called.
We got infested.
Eso!
Ah!
Ballast!
I'm lost with you! I lost. I sacrificed myself.
Remember me.
It was a group you could call home. I mean, I even did some PvP with these people, and if that made PvP of all things fun, then I know I'm not overglazing it. So a big shout out to Alaya, Shignon, Bottomtext, Hesso, Simulson, B2, and my other guildmates who came and helped fill the group up so we didn't have to pug as much. Without you, I might not have lasted this long in Classic. Thank you so much. No surprise here, the music is absolutely godlike. Absolutely my all-time favorite. Not only is Arthas My Son or Invincible still to this day the best character theme in the franchise, but Wrath of the Lich King is far from being a one-hit wonder. The theme you get riding the boat into Howling Fjord just gives you enough reason to why it tops Boring Tundra by a landslide. I love the Raikul music here. It adds so much to the atmosphere, and you really feel like you're in a Viking village. Totems of the Grizzlemaw is so iconic too. Just listening to the Nyckelharpa that is playing here makes you feel like you're partaking in a classic Scandinavian midsummer party. Everyone has folk dresses on and are simply having the best time ever. But my all-time favorite, I think, must be the Mountains of Thunder that plays in the Storm Peaks. I just want you to listen to it just for a minute. Skip ahead if you want. Just flying around the snowy mountains listening to this, it's just absolute cinema. It captures the stormy nature of this place. Glenn Stafford and Russell Brower, you beautiful bastards, you are gods. But what is wrong with me? How could I forget the honorable mention of the awesome saxophone solo, which I first thought was a guitar, in The Forge of Souls. Truly a masterpiece. Rock on, Bronjam, rock on. Due to the fact that you have two options now where to level, and not just one where everyone is bottlenecked in, like the Burning Crusade, made this so much better, both on first play but also for replaying. The music adds to it so much. I think Wrath was the one where I rarely turned the music off. There were so many versions of the same song that it did not become too repetitive. I realized this might be when they start doing this. It's such a good idea. The quests are fun and the pace is just right. Some of them were not such bangers. I feel like Borean Tundra was all over the place on the quests, and the zone just isn't the best looking one. Soul Drak was cool for the first time, but the storyline went a bit too long and I only completed it a couple of times. The Drukhari offerings was kinda cool though, where you could offer them at the 3 altars in the zone. It really gave some flavor, and it took me back to the World Buff collection days, but on replay I would just vendor them. Icecrown was not as good as I thought. It was kinda cool with the Skybreaker and Ogrim's hammer flying around, and the zone really felt threatening with all the undead roaming around. But again, I feel like it got long and tedious on replay. The rest of the zones are peak though, and was usually my go-to route. As I've said before, the introduction to Howling Fjord with the boat coming in and with the music playing, that is by itself how the leveling experience should be in World of Warcraft. Grizzly Hills with the zone music on blast while you take a massive seed dump. I mean, do I need to say more?
What you say?
Okay, the different Grizzlemaw Furbolg factions were cool, where when you killed a Red Fang Furbolg, for example, you became neutral with the Frostpaw Furbolgs. Furbolgs. Yeah, that was pretty neat. The fight with Ursak to cleanse his spirit, the Cursed Village who turned Team Jacob, the Troll area and the group quest on the Blood Moon Isle. Everything here is solid, except for maybe the Iron Dwarf quests. They went for a bit too long and was not that fun. Dragonblight is basically Borean Tundra but better, with different climates in the same zones, with Nerubian tunnels, the Scourge-infested Tanuka village, the misty Forgotten Shore, the different dragon shrines. Holy Crusade, the Scarlet Crusade is back! Wormrest Temple really taking me back to the private server days. Yeah, I remember a server where the hub with all the custom vendors that fun servers used to have were put in different levels of Wormrest Temple. Maybe some of you remember what that server was called, and I understand there might have been more servers who did the same thing. And wrapping it all up was the one and only Wrathgate. What a cinematic, man. Even with the classic polygons, which is supposed to be graphics.
There's still kind of a magic behind these PlayStation 1 era graphics. Like, you know, look at how cute this little squirrel is. Oh, wow. You probably have like, is that like 7 or 8 polygons altogether?
One problem I had with this zone though is the RP quest in the basement cells that took like 4 minutes of dialogue to listen through before you got credit for the quest. It was one of those quests where we formed a line when everyone just started Wrath Classic and a ton of players were waiting their turn. I admit it was not as fun as waiting with a group to kill Hogger in Vanilla Classic. Sholazar Basin is where you cast away all that crap that the Azeroth PETA group taught you and killed a ton of beasts.
How about we go shoot a bunch of fucking giraffes and shit? Oh, sure. That son of a species extinct.
I love these quests, man. A nice callback to the other times we did similar quests for Hammett Nesingwary in Nagrand and Stranglethorn Vale. And that was Wrath of the Lich King. Hands down the best of the classic trilogy. Theme-wise, it slaps, and it has more RP and story-driven quests than the other expansions in the trilogy. Also, it helped that the leveling didn't take an eternity, and at the same time was not as fast as retail. It was just right. The raids were at worst at least good enough compared to whatever Hyjol was in TBC, and it was not a snooze fest like the vanilla raids. And also I got to do all of them at least once this time, even if Ruby's Sanctum was not really it for me. This is really what Classic should be like in my book. Balanced enough so you don't have meme specs, proper rotations so you don't just hit Frostbolt over and over again, and raids with proper mechanics. So it's not just stand still and hit the boss until it falls. Lastly, it still feels classic, so it isn't retail light. Heroic Plus is not my jam. I really wish they would instead focus on keeping the old raids more relevant, so there are more reasons to go back even if you're fully bissed out. But whatever. And that was the classic trilogy. The original plan was to only cover these 3, but since I was in the planning phase too long, eventually Cata finished, and now we are in phase 3 of Mr. Pandaria. So I thought why not talk about Cata as well, and I guess I can mention some things about Pandaria even if it isn't finished yet. But anyways, eventually Cata Classic was announced with some mixed opinions, but my guild was planning to continue on, so I followed along. What awaits this expansion themed with dragons, furries, and tiny green goblins? I have to say I didn't play it nearly as much as the trilogy, and I am trying to finish this video soon, so I'm sorry if this feels rushed. I do have some things to say about the expansion though. The main reason for me not playing Cata much was because the War Within released around the same time and made retail much better gameplay wise, with the introduction of delves and a new warband system, which meant a ton of items was made account wide, which basically is every player with a lot of alts' biggest dream. But this is about Cata. I've always had a soft spot for Cata. I would definitely call myself a so-called Cata baby. It was the first expansion where you actually started to play on servers where you played on level servers. I don't remember if it was Bliss-like or high XP rate servers, but it was not fun servers at least. And it was the first expansion where I dipped my toes in the official retail servers. I just love the music in Cata. I had Stranglethorn Vale, Redridge Mountains / Western Plaguelands, and Night Song on my Sony Ericsson flip phone. Definitely in my top 3 expansions in terms of music. Honorable mentions would be the new versions of the Elven Forest music, the Stormwind music, and the Mulgore Plains music. I recommend listening to the cover of the Mulgore Plains by Droyant Desan. Somehow he found IRL Mulgore and just went all out with his instruments. It is so good. Anyway, this is the expansion where Deathwing had an outdated map of the world and thought that Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdom was the only continents on Earth. On Earth? The only continents on Azeroth. So he went ham on them and wrecked them, causing chaos across Azeroth. Except Northrend and Pandaria and the Broken Isles, the Zandalar, Kultiras. Like, was Deathwing still in 2004? The zones were not only changed visually, but the quests were redone to more match the current situation. This is something I liked, and I am surprised not more classic players like. Now think about it. This is the only expansion where the leveling experience got a rework, making it feel fresh. What I feel is the reason the leveling part of the game shifted so much to what it currently is in retail is because the leveling never got updated. Everything is still the same, no matter how many expansions comes out. Since this point in time, Outland still remains the oldest continent in WoW, due to it still looking how it did back in 2007. Something I would really want for the game is to update everything in it, so it really feels like time isn't standing still. Like, how is Outland like now without the influence of Illidan, Kel'Thas and Lady Vashj? How is Pandaria without the Shah corrupting the land? How is the peace between the Draenei and the Iron Horde working out on Draenor? How is Mount Hyjal healing after being burnt by Ragnarok's elemental forces? Stuff like this is what I want to see, not only through instanced quests, but also through updating the world like Cataclysm did. Cataclysm at least does this to an extent. It updates the world not only through the quest, but also changes it visually. But enough about my thoughts on the current game. This is about Cataclysmic. This is the expansion where transmog was introduced, and you know that your boy went to all raids during the pre-patch to gather transmog pieces. I read that they were bringing the retail transmog system rather than the old one, which is super welcomed in my opinion. Like, why have an old version of something, or Elune forbid you make a completely new version, which turns out to be much worse? No, it is simple really. Just take the latest working version of that system and implement it in Classic. After filling my bank with transmog along with memories of every Classic expansion, Cataclysm finally launched. Unfortunately, I was kind of disappointed. Could it be because my pug group was no more? Maybe, but it was also because I only had the catazones to level up in. It didn't matter that Azeroth got a big overhaul. I was already level 80 on every character I planned to level. Mount Hyjal was fine though, and I felt Vashj'ir was honestly underrated. I felt this was the first time where I didn't finish the whole zone, since I went for the next zone as soon as I reached the level required to continue. It got repetitive quickly, and man did it feel slow to level again. Even if it was just 5 levels, they really slowed it down so you got as much content as if it was still 10 levels. On top of all this, we need to talk about the raids. Heroic raiding is just too hard, man. Way too sweaty for my taste. And the raid group I was in, my guild that was supposed to be the casual/alt group, started to become more and more like the tryhard group, with a lot of heroic progress as early as possible. You know, that's at least how it felt like. And like salt on the open wound, I once again was forced to tank, because feral DPS was kind of meh once again. I might not have been locked to tank, but this is around the time most players quit the game, so we barely had enough people signing up for a 10-man. So despite me signing DPS every time, I was assigned to tank anyways like 9 out of 10 times. So I decided to build my druid like a tank/DPS hybrid, where I would get purple stamina and agility gems instead of pure stamina or pure agility, so I could do both decently. And I went with tank enchants. I don't want to blame my guild for this, since the content is indeed harder, so you kind of have to be more strict and more tryhard to even clear the raid. The reason why I'm saying heroic raiding was too hard is because as soon as we went normal on some bosses that were too hard for us on heroic that reset, it was like night and day. The bosses had reasonably amount of damage and health, and the mechanics was not too overwhelming. This is how it should be, I thought. But yeah, I carried on and expecting it to be better as the phases went on. It kind of did, since Firelands was at least not as hard as Bastion of Twilight and Blackwind Descent in my opinion. Dragon Soul was funnily enough not that hard to do tank wise, so it actually started to become fun again. But yeah, fuck the first raid phase. Except Throne of the Four Winds maybe. I lost the whole memey and jokey around part about raiding, and it was made more into a focus up, clear comms environment. But this time it was justified, unlike in vanilla, I guess. I still didn't like it though. I've talked a lot about the raiding and the leveling already, and as you might have understood judging from what I have said so far, they already are negatives that I don't really have anything else to say about. It was fun at the end, but the beginning was absolutely tragic. So let's start talking about the other negatives, and then we go with the positives. Maybe they will release it in the end like they did with RFD and RAF? No. LFR is not coming back for Classic. I just don't know what to say. Why are we not at least including it as a practice tool and just not make it drop loot since Heroic Plus is here? I would rather learn the raid mechanics through in-game practice rather than looking through a sweaty TLDR guide on YouTube on what to do. I don't like it, man. If the Classic Enders didn't already leave in Wrath, they sure as hell left in Cata, so I really don't see the point in not including it. The ones who are really against it is once again in Classic Era, so hello, amigo? What's the issue here? Speaking of Heroic Plus. At this point, I've gotten used to the Heroic Plus system and it still sucks. Again, why is it not implemented somehow into raiding instead of dungeons? It gets so repetitive and boring. As soon as Firelands got launched, there is no reason to do Phase 1 raids anymore, since all the loot can just be bought with the latest Heroic Plus currency. Great and quick catch-up mechanics to gear up alts, but I just wish I could do it through raids instead of dungeon spam. Like, what's with the rush? Anyway, I don't want to repeat myself too much. You all know how I feel like Heroic Plus at this point. Moving on. I have covered that I really like the War Within expansion, except for the story. That is not something even the strongest retail Andy can defend. This is about Cataclysm, but the War Within really affected my time in Cata, since I just had a better time over at retail, which has not been a thing since Classic released. Shadowlands came out in 2020, and that sure was not pretty, so I was happy with being in Classic at the time, but now the turns have tabled. It just was way better built for a casual like me, and I felt I could do content in a difficulty that suited me. It truly is unfortunate, but this is the part where I started to only log into raids more and more as the time went on. But now let's get some positives in here to ease out the negativity. So when I say I have Cata in my top 3 best expansion music, I really mean it. Holy hell, I might be biased, but Night Song and Mulgore Plains is so good, man. I like the new updated songs from the most part, except for maybe the Darnassus one. It is not like it's bad, but I don't know why they removed the old theme. If I could choose, I would much rather have the old theme there. I don't see the reason. Stormwind, for example, still has its classic theme when you enter the city, but now you have a much more epic music added, like the one you hear in the Keep. Most updated music in the Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdom zones really captures the feeling of the land you once knew is now changed or flat out destroyed. Elven Forest I would describe as like you got knocked out by Deathwing passing by and now you wake up to see how the land has changed around you. Since the music is for the most part just added on rather than replacing, it does not feel too intrusive either and just feels welcomed, like a fresh coat of paint on your house. I made a goblin and a worgen just to see how the starting zones was during the Cata days, and a dwarf rogue just to collect some transmog pieces that I might have forgotten through the quest rewards, since I simply did not have enough room in my bags on a druid. Kazan is such a charming place. It's basically Cyberpunk 2010. You drive around in a car for a lot of the quest, and in fact that running over people actually sends them flying is so funny. It ties well with the story on how the goblins eventually join the Horde, since they are also a group of outcasts trying to find a place to call home. The British furry community, aka the Gilneans, also has a nice starting zone experience. You start off as a common Victorian knife wielder, and it all ends up with you looking at Nala from The Lion King and thinking to yourself, wood. Turning you into the Worgen. Jokes aside, I love the Worgen theme. The mysterious Victorian vibe with the ruins of Gilneas, where it's constantly raining for whatever reason. Maybe this is Western Norway, but I understand England isn't known for its beautiful weather either.
I just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! I hate the fucking place! I fucking hate it! It's full of dickheads! I fucking hate it!
The Cataclysm shattered the Greymane Wall, and the Forsaken are invading, using the Blight as their weapon of choice. This despite Sylvanas being told by the Horde to not use it again since the Wrathgate incident. This makes Sylvanas a real clever-mouthed bitch. The Night Elves taking them in felt a bit weird at first, but after learning that the Worgen was originally a forbidden druid form, it kinda makes sense that the Night Elves are able to give them the guidance that they need to control their bloodlust. New races both have a nice starting zone, introducing the players to why they joined a faction after either being neutral or just straight up isolated from the world. I understand why people are mad that Blizzard straight up deleted the pre-Cata zones, because it would make so much more sense for you to be able to choose between what version of Azeroth to level in when you make your character. It would be interesting getting the post-Cata world only after you reach level 80, like getting a cutscene of Deathwing waking up and flying around Azeroth. Not necessarily the expansion cinematic, but now that I think of it, maybe that would be easier. And after the cutscene is done, you are now phased into the post-Cata world. I have to say I do prefer the post-Cata zones only because the leveling is now streamlined. So when you level in a zone, you're not leaving that zone until you finish it or reach a high enough level to progress to the next. This is not a popular take among the classic players from what I understand, because it feels less like you're in a world and more like you're stuck on one zone at a time. Well, I have to say, doing enough quests in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor to get Lore Master before the Cata pre-patch hit was a drag. Holy hell. I thought I could go from top to bottom and do the quests zone-wise, but there was so much flying and boat riding around Azeroth that I had to do. Like a flight from Gadgetzan in Tanaris to Everlook in Winterspring takes around 20 minutes, and you have to take that flight way too often in my opinion. There's so much time traveling and not a whole lot of actually playing the game. Luckily, I could skip half of it by teleporting to Moonglade when I needed to go to Winterspring. My absolute favorite zone that, to be fair, I have huge nostalgia buys for is Red Ridge Mountains. The story of reforming the Bravo Company and to solve the Blackrock Orc problem in the zone is one of the first experience I had on the zone story-driven leveling that Cataclysm introduced, and it was so good. Listening to the zone music is always going to remind me of when I leveled my mage on my first laptop. Good times. Leveling through it again in Cataclysm was obviously not the same, and it was nice leveling in the zone with the Cataclysm class design. You can level there in retail, but that will be with the War Within class design, and the leveling is way faster, so it's not going to be the same. I never leveled any of the characters I made in Cataclysm to max, just because I already had one of every class, and I just wanted to experience how the starting zone was, and to do the quest necessary to get some transmog. Nothing more. Because Cata really is a big step towards Classic just being retail again, and I just don't feel the need to do the same stuff that I already did back then. It is kind of sad when I think about it, but as I said, retail got better and I kind of just wanted to raid because that is what I didn't do back in the day. Sorry for the ramble, but I really want to explain why I was not that keen on playing this expansion again, since Cata was the first retail expansion that I played. You could call me a Cata baby, even if I've played the classic trilogy through private servers, because it was mostly on fun servers. Anyway, moving on. In Cataclysm, Blizzard upgraded the auction house design to what is currently in retail. I will be absolutely obliterated on this hill, but the retail auction house is one of the few things that I think is just objectively better than the classic one. I'm sorry, but if you prefer the classic auction house, I'm just going to assume it is because you're too used to using that version and that you refuse to use the new version, like a boomer refusing to learn the latest technology. So let me paint a couple of scenarios for you. You're on your way to the auction house to buy materials for making a piece of gear. You only need 13 iron bars, let's say, but can't find anything but stacks of 20. And some with stacks of 6, 5, whatever. Now you have to either buy one stack of 20 and get 7 bars as leftovers, or you're going to have to do some math to get to 13 by either buying 13 stacks of 1, or maybe 1 stack of 5 and 1 stack of 8. It's just too much. And in retail, you just have to type in 13, and you will buy the 13 cheapest iron bars currently listed. Easy clap in the layer. Another scenario would be you wanting to buy materials in bulk for making flasks, and you're looking to buy 150 flowers for it. In Classic, the best scenario would be if there are a ton of 20 stacks listed, so you could just buy a ton of these and it will be at least an even number. But for a lot of the time you will only find like 1 or 2 stacks of 20, and the rest will be uneven stacks, or even worse, a lot of stacks of 1. So you have to spam click until you get carpal tunnel, until you get a satisfying amount of flowers for your flasks. In retail, once again, you simply type in 150 and you will buy the 150 cheapest flowers currently listed. Easy clap in the layer. So I really don't understand why this hasn't happened earlier, at least in Burning Crusade Classic, when the classic purists are no longer going to play. The retail auction house system is miles better, and I'm never going to be told otherwise. So that was my thoughts on Cataclysm. I had way more to say than I thought, even though I didn't play much. In conclusion, Cata was fine, but it was not as good as I would have hoped. Heroic raids are too hard, and people don't want to raid in a comfortable pace to learn by doing, and instead just expect everyone to have a bachelor's degree on the raid mechanics before you even dip one toe into the raid. Heroic Plus is still ruining the raiding experience by making other raids irrelevant. Like, I want to raid with my alts, not spam Heroic Plus dungeons over and over again until I have the right amount of currency to buy the loot. I feel all of this is a testament to why Classic was never going to be the same, because it has already been solved and there's no reason to not know everything about the game. We could just all decide to go in blind and not look up everything, and be more open to people not looking up everything, but that unfortunately never happened. In Cata, I always felt more punished for not knowing everything compared to the Classic trilogy, and if I did this again, I would 100% seek out a guild that is going to fit my needs on what I look for in a guild. I stuck with my guild because I thought things would get better, and thankfully Dragon Soul was more fun than I expected, and Mr. Pandaria Classic was announced, so I inhaled some hopium and hopefully Pandaria will be a better experience. Now Mr. Pandaria is still going. I have to say that despite it currently being in phase 3, I've not done a single raid yet. I've only done Celestial Dungeons. And I got deep into Pandaria Farmville, aka the Tillers. It was surprisingly fun to level up the reputation with the Tillers, to eventually have the entire farmland to plant seeds in. Yeah, dailies can suck my loon blessed dick though, especially since you can just spam Celestial Dungeons to get gear that way. And no, I don't care that some rep gear is pre-raid biz, I really don't. Especially when you probably will get even better gear from Heroic Plus as the expansion is progressing. I only farmed Exalted rep with the factions that gives mounts. The Anglers and the Order of the Cloud Serpents. Those dailies were not too bad either, and I like that you are racing your mount from a hatchling to a Cloud Serpent and doing some flying exercises to bond with it, eventually unlocking it as an actual mount. I can also talk about the leveling. Once again, in the beginning, it was more annoying than fun to level with all these people, and you had to fight for tags once again because Blizzard really didn't want to put in share tags, even if we are this far into the expansion. Other than that, the zones are beautiful, and the story is really engaging, especially in the Vale of the Four Winds, with you following Chen and Lily Stormstout on adventures. One quest that stood out is the quest where you are taking Lily with you on a questing journey. She had some fun quotes, like the one that tricked me into flying into the waterfall by saying that you should always check them for treasures. Another quest chain that I really enjoyed is the one where you look for a hidden master in the zone, which takes you to the other end of the zone. You become the hidden master's student, and you get a couple of amusing montages of you training martial arts with the master. I gotta say, it feels really odd seeing my mage doing melee combat. Imagine if the spellcasters instead got sent to a magic academy to study magic. I guess we will never know. Unfortunately, that was the one zone I enjoyed doing more than one time. The rest of the zones I just did until I could progress to the next zone, which was kind of sad. The pacing was fine at least, even though we once again only had 5 levels to do, so there was not much XP earned throughout the continent. But this is basically all that I've done so far in Pandaria. Not much to say. I once again have too much fun in retail to put much time into Classic, but I want to give at least raiding in Pandaria a shot. When? I do not know. I can do a video talking about it when the expansion is over if you want me to do it, but for now, that is all. Mr. Pandaria will also be the last expansion that I play in Classic, so if they do Warlords of Draenor, I will only play a little with my friends, and I will only be playing hyper casually. WoD is the end of Classic in my book, because at least I remember the raids and the content of WoD. It is too much like retail at this point, even for me. So that was my journey through Classic. Thank you so much for watching. It has been really fun doing it, and I hope you liked it even if you maybe didn't agree with my takes. Even if this is not my first YouTube video, it's still the first time I've done a video like this. So I hope I can get some feedback from you all if you think I was lacking in some areas. Or if you think I did good in some areas. If there were some things I got wrong, unless it's subjective of course, then feel free to correct me in the comments. It's been 6.5 years of Classic after all, I might have remembered something wrong. As I said a couple of times, I will gladly do a video talking about the other Classic vanilla versions, as well as going more into a Classic versus retail style video, where I discuss what I think retail does worse as well as better than Classic. I mentioned some in this video, but I feel like going deeper would be too much for just one video. For my Swedish subscribers, I want to say sorry about the amount of time it took for me to make this video, from the day that I announced that I was going to do it. I really hope it was worth it. I made a poll if you wanted me to do English videos to include a bigger audience, but the poll has spoken. It is not a closed poll yet, however, so if you want to vote, there is still time. I will probably still have videos like this in English, but if the poll favors Swedish videos, then the other videos I will make will of course be in Swedish. But enough rambling. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Night Purple out.
Tuta eller?
Ja, vi saknar Purple, men...
Purple.
Är det loading screen?
Purple, skulle du veva igång fanskapet då?
Hamsterhjulet snurrar så fort det går. Nu jävlar.
Jag fick hjärtattack på det.
Man hör hur bara veva igång när det startar ett kärnkraftverk. Det bara...
det är mitt skrivbord.
Vibrationerna i skrivbordet.
Orkar inte stå nu, sitter jag ner alltså.
10 ska du snabbt, baby.
Ja, men för fan.